Good evening. Today is Monday, May 4th, 2026. This is a special meeting of the Newburgh and Large City School District. Before we get going, our live stream is not working. However, the meeting is being recorded in its entirety. We have roll call next.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Here.
Ms. Thomasina Bello. Ms. Boucher. Mr. Bergarelli.
Present.
Ms. Burks.
Here.
Mr. DeRay.
Present.
Mr. Howard.
Present.
Mr. Levenstein.
Here.
Ms. Politti. Mr. Orsino.
Here.
Thank you. We have one item on the agenda tonight. Two items. First is a presentation by Ms. Oring on the response to the Controller's New York State report.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I just have a question, since it's not being broadcast live, is there is that written, if people were looking to it, that they understand that it is being recorded and it will be posted? Is there something up there now so they don't get disappointed? Just a statement saying that it will be up, that it's being recorded, and it will be put up when the recording is finished.
Dr. Spars?
Yes, on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Oring.
Thank you. So tonight we're going to review the proposed corrected action plan from the State Comptroller's audit, which was issued at the beginning of February 2026. Next slide, please. So school districts in New York State undergo a number of audits, and there are many that are annual audit requirements. We undergo the following audits. The external audit is a financial audit that's done every year. It begins as soon as the year closes, and we have a final report issued and approved by the board no later than October 15th. The risk assessment is also considered the internal audit, and this is a procedural audit that looks at processes and procedures around the district. It is not exclusive to finance. This is also done annually. With that, a special area is identified by the board to dive in deeper. This year's special area selected by the audit committee was employee benefits. We also undergo a single audit every year. This is specific to grant funds and ensures that the district remains compliant with federal regulations around how those funds are spent. We have a claims auditor, and she reviews every single claim before payment is processed. If she does not approve that payment, it may not be made. Then we have the regulatory audit, which is the State Comptroller's office. They audit periodically, and they audit all public entities across the state. They identify the area of focus, and this time around, that was financial management. They also look at district tax cut calculations and management of the employees' retirement system, which they oversee. Next slide, please. So the Division of Local Government and School Accountability conducts these audits of local governments, special districts, public authorities, BOCES, charter schools, and school districts across the state on a variety of areas, such as information technology, payroll and benefits, financial management, purchasing or procurement, claims auditing, records, inventory, capital projects, and more. These periodic audits are generally done about every 5 years, but COVID impacted their audit cycle. Next slide, please. The purpose of an audit by the State Comptroller is to ensure state and local governments use taxpayer money efficiently, effectively, and transparently. These audits aim to improve operations, strengthen internal controls, promote public accountability, and reduce costs. It is routine for publicly funded organizations across New York State to be audited. For example, the City of Newburgh was audited by the State Comptroller's Office 6 times between 2019 and 2024. Each of these were budgetary reviews. Next slide. The last audit for Newburgh was issued in June of 2019. That was a financial management and information technology audit. This time they did a financial management audit, which is the broadest scope. The audit period is for July 2019 to June 2024. It's a 5-year period. The report does include 3 findings with 7 recommendations. So the timeline for this audit. The entry meeting was in May of 2024, and their auditor began their work on site from May 2024 through November 2024, gathering information, data, performing testing on financial information, reviewing personnel files, and human resources. While on site, they also performed the periodic periodic audit of the local employees retirement system. Next slide. The draft report was issued in November of 2025. The district's response was prepared and is to be submitted within 30 days. The exit conference is scheduled for December 2025. Our final report was issued February 2026, and we must provide a corrective action plan filed with the State Comptroller's Office within 90 days of receiving that report. Next slide, please. The corrective action plan is required if an audit report has findings and or recommendations, and it must include what corrective actions have already occurred or are planned, who's responsible, and the implementation date. The governing body or the Board of Education must approve this corrective action plan before it is submitted to the State Comptroller's Office. Next slide, please. Finding 1, board and district officials did not develop and adopt realistic budget or effectively manage fund balance between July 2019 to June 2024. There are several notes we want to include in here so that there's a better understanding of that time period. During this time, the district had 3 superintendents and 5 business officials. During this time, the district also received a significant amount of federal one-time funds, and New York State decided to implement its full funding of foundation aid. Additionally, standard operating procedures for the business office functions were developed in the 22-23 fiscal year by current district leadership. These are still used to direct the work and how it's done for both consistency and compliance. Recommendation 1 is develop and adopt budgets that include reasonable expenditures and revenue estimates. The response to this one is that no action is required. The Board of Education hired an independent consultant on budget in March of 2025. They evaluated budget and revenue estimates, as well as how those were arrived at. The budget consultant agreed with the approach to the estimates and considered those made for fiscal 26 reasonable and appropriate. The budget consultant reviewed the budget development process as well and did not recommend any changes to the current process. Next slide. Recommendation 2, to develop and adopt a plan to reduce surplus fund balance to comply with the statutory limit in real property tax law. They identified 4 possible uses of funds: funding one-time expenditures, needed reserves, paying off district debt, or reducing property taxes. It's very important to know and understand that the district may not issue refund checks to taxpayers. Surplus funds are used as a revenue source to reduce tax increases as you move forward. Our response to this recommendation is no action is required. The plan to reduce excess unassigned fund balance that was identified was shared publicly with the board and the community on January 28, 2025. These funds were used as revenue in the 25-26 budget. We are currently within the 4% limit. Additionally, the Board of Education annually approves funding of restricted reserves through a board resolution at a public meeting. This establishes funding limits for the listed reserves, and those have not been exceeded by current district leadership. Additionally, in each of the past 3 years, fiscal 24, 25, and 26, 2 of those years outside of the audit period, surplus funds were used to pay down debt. Surplus funds were utilized to pay some of our band principal to reduce our long-term debt expense, which is one of the areas identified by the State Comptroller. Additionally, we have used those funds for one-time purchases, including climate control for the district data closets, which was identified as a priority. We've also used it for security upgrades, roof repairs and replacements, and emergency electrical work. Next slide. Finding 2, reserves were not always funded as part of the budget process or lacked proper management. Next slide. Recommendation 3, to fund reserves transparently by including anticipated funding of reserves in the annual operating budget, rather than through year-end transfers of operating surplus. Our response to this is no action is required. This recommendation does not align with budget development processes of most school districts or public entities. The district does not build in surplus funds to its annual operating budget to fund reserves at the end of the year. Reserves are funded when surplus funds exist at the end of the year, and we shared in the April 7th board meeting in our budget presentation that those often result from unfilled positions, salaries, and benefits associated therewith. Next slide. Recommendation 4, review and update the fund balance and reserve fund policy to include all reserves held by the district and clarify optimal funding levels. Our response here is that this is complete. The policy for reserve funds was updated in May of 2023, but was only approved by the policy committee at that time. The Board of Education adopted that updated policy on April 21st, 2026. Recommendation 5, review all reserve fund balances to determine whether amounts reserved are necessary and reasonable, and reduce overfunded reserves. Our response to this is that a review will be conducted by the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and our District Treasurer in consultation with the district's external auditor and legal counsel on current funding levels and possible reductions. Any such recommendations will be brought forward to the board for their consideration as to whether or not those should be reduced. We do want to note, once again, that as part of our budget development process, we provide a multi-year plan for how the use of reserve funds will occur as part of our operating revenue. Next slide. Recommendation 6 is that to ensure that budget transfers are approved by the board for all transfers into reserve funds. Our response here again is no action is required. This has been a consistent district practice since June of 2022, and we identify the dates for each fiscal year that the board adopted such resolutions. And again, the limits established in these resolutions have not been exceeded. Additionally, we wanted to note that in fiscal year 25, the board also approved the reserve fund resolution, and those limits were not exceeded either. Finding 3, the board did not develop a written multi-year financial plan or a comprehensive capital plan that addressed capital needs. Recommendation 7, the board and district officials should develop and adopt and periodically update a written multi-year financial plan and comprehensive capital plan to be used in conjunction with the district's annual budget development process. Recommendation 7, our response is that the district agrees with this recommendation. The board and district leadership recognize the importance of long-term financial and capital planning for fiscal stability and to inform decision making. The district leadership has engaged in long-range financial forecasting and shares that information during the budget development process each year with the board and community. This also again highlights our planned use of restricted reserves as a revenue source. Additionally, every 5 years, in compliance with SED regulation, the district undergoes what is called a building condition survey. This is a comprehensive review of each building, including its site, exterior facade or building envelope, the interior, mechanical, electrical, and other systems within the building, as well as furnishings. The resultant report includes cost estimates for recommended work, and there's a prioritization process that occurs with those the survey before it's filed with SED to identify those things that might be in a future capital plan. Typically, priority 1s and perhaps priority 2s, depending on the funding levels, are adopted in future capital plans. Ours is due to be filed in February of 2027, so we will begin that building condition survey process shortly. We know that it's going to identify some needs in our buildings, in our building envelopes, and our interiors, and some of our systems. So we are looking forward to that comprehensive report to help inform future improvements in our schools for our students and our community. Next steps, the board will need to vote to approve the corrective action plan, and district leadership will submit this to the state comptroller's office.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Specialist policy.
Excuse me, I have 2 things just I'd like to ask about. Firstly, the board approved a budget to bring to the voters sometime in April, correct? And in that was a dollar amount that we believe the state is going to be giving us for to run this district. So now the voters are going to vote for this in 2 weeks. Has the state completed their budget and told us exactly what it's going to be?
No, there is still not an approved state budget by the legislature. So that process is still ongoing, so we do not have a final number.
Okay, so we meaning the voters, are voting on something that we believe to be correct. And listen, I hope it's wrong and they give a lot more money to the schools. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but let's assume that it is. So we don't know exactly how much money will be here. It may be less, it may be more. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that point up. And it seems that's more often than not, we don't have an accurate figure by the time the board votes on it at least, and then also when the public votes on it.
So So it has become a little bit more frequent where we have not had a final state budget by the time the board votes with our current governor. However, last year they adopted around May 8th, so we did have final numbers before the voters acted. What the voters are approving is the tax levy and the amount not to exceed. So if we were to get additional revenue, they've approved our cap on a budget. It just means that we would use different sources to cover those expenditures, or the board would have to vote to amend the budget.
So if they do decide to give more money, which sometimes, more often than not, I think they do, that becomes a surplus in our figuring, correct? Because we didn't figure we were getting that much money.
It could.
It could, all right. So my next question is also in regards to the next step. You said that we're gonna vote tonight, we're gonna submit it. Does the state have any step after? Do they approve our corrective action plan? Do they not approve it? Do they put it in a file? Do they wait for next year and say, hey, did you do what you said you were gonna do?
There is no cycle of follow-up on these regulatory audits, but they are published, and we are required to submit the corrective action plan, and that would be a document that would also be publicly available.
Okay, but it's not followed up, it's not,
They're not gonna come back next year and say, what did you do?
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard and Ms. Bell.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. President. So, Ms. Roaring, for the edification of a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, and what I've been hit with throughout the community, in layman's terms, can you please explain what a reserve fund is? What a reserve fund is used for? What is the expectation of a reserve fund in a district of this size? And what unexpected expenses can be used with a reserve fund?
So I'm going to speak in general terms because we know that reserve funds are designated for specific purposes, correct? So we have a workers' comp reserve, for example, that we use as a revenue source to offset that expense in our budget rather than increase taxes. We also have an unemployment reserve that we similarly use to cover those expenses rather than tax for that expense. I think the ones that most people are closely familiar with are capital reserves, because those are reserves that are designated for capital improvements in the future, and we have to ask the voters to approve the use of those reserves. So the State Comptroller's Office has stipulated that it is prudent and fiscally appropriate to have savings accounts. And essentially what we have is restricted savings accounts, and then we have the unassigned fund balance, which we can use for general purposes. You will notice that we have used those in the last few budgets as a source of revenue. It was proposed use again this year. We always plan that out for future years. We do not assume that we're going to be able to fund those at the end of each year, because in a perfect world, if we hired all the staff we wanted to have for our students and all the other costs came in as intended or planned based on what we know now, we wouldn't have a surplus. So it really is the anomalies in that planning and our projections that are more than a year in advance of what those expenditures are that drives whether or not we have the ability to save. So reserves are a savings account for the district to be used for specific items as designated by that reserve.
Thank you. And can you speak to the idea that's going throughout the community that they should be getting, or we should be getting, a tax refund based on what happened last year? Can you just speak to that and talk about why that's not happening, and explain it in layman's terms to the public why it's not happening?
So if we could go back to slide 11 on the presentation, that'd be helpful. So while this recommendation from the State Comptroller's Office does itemize 4 ways in which they suggest we use surplus funds, one is for those one-time expenditures, which we've done. It's also funding needed reserves, which we've done, and paying off debt, which I want to note again is one of the best things that I think we can do, because that saves us future expense. So if I reduce our debt service expense in future year budgets by paying that off, that means there's more dollars in those budgets to go towards program and supports for kids. So it is one of the best ways that we can use surplus funds. The last way that they suggest is reducing district property taxes. Again, the district may not issue a tax refund check. There's no mechanism in law that allows us to issue a tax refund. What we do is we use those surplus funds towards the next year's budget, offsetting or not having any tax increase as a result of that. And while we did increase taxes in fiscal year 24-25, we haven't done it in 26, and it's not proposed for 27.
So, last question. So, I'm just curious, has, to your knowledge, and many districts you work in, and being in that area of expertise, has that been done anywhere in New York State?
Zero tax levies?
No, where refunds were given
No,
out.
because there's no statutory mechanism to do that.
Thank you,
No.
okay.
Why is it on the cap that so many, in the column that says person responsible for implementation, why is that left blank in so many areas?
Because there's no action required, so there wouldn't be anyone responsible for it. It's already addressed in our current procedures.
Okay, so if you say there's no action required, does that mean that you disagree with the comptroller's findings?
We explained that response each time, and we noted in many cases that it was already resolved, so there was no action required.
Okay. And I believe it was Ramapo that actually did issue a refund to taxpayers in one year or another. But anyway,
So East Ramapo has a very different construct. They're under a fiscal oversight by the state. So they have different rules of engagement there in terms of how they do a number of things, including procurement.
But it could be done.
Districts in general do not have a statutory mechanism by which to issue a refund.
Well, why would the state comptroller make a recommendation that we couldn't do, or couldn't fulfill?
They're making a recommendation that you reduce taxes, not that you issue a refund, and we did do that. We used the surplus funds to not have a tax levy increase in future years. So we have done that recommendation.
Okay, and finally, if the state comptroller's auditors reject this corrective action plan, are there consequences for the district?
The board approves the corrective action plan and it's submitted to the state comptroller's office. They neither approve or reject.
They neither approve or reject?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Bergerell,
Thank you, Mr. President. The last time the building's condition survey was done, that would be like kind of like during COVID. Was there a delay of that survey because of COVID at all, or was it pushed back?
So they actually changed the regulations during that period of time, and they used to have visual inspections on a cycle and then the full building condition survey. And they changed the schedule across the state and issued a new 5-year cycle for all districts. So we are on schedule at this time.
Okay, and last question on that, in regards to that. Are there any issues or projects that we haven't started yet that are from that building condition survey from last time?
So what I would tell you is that there were some items that were identified for the capital bond in 2019 that we have not done. And that's something that we've talked with the board about in the past based on cost escalation and other factors. There are some things that may not be able to be done. But what we know from the new building condition survey is it's a current snapshot in time. And that really is the thing that will inform our future capital work because it gives us a comprehensive review of the current state of our buildings, reflecting work that has been done as part of capital, work that's been done as part of our operating budget because it was essential, and where we really need to go from here.
Okay, so you're saying we're not going to see any of those things that were found back then, or it's still kind of up in the air?
So this becomes our new snapshot that really guides us. So we're not looking backwards, we're using this to look forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on 2-1? All right, we'll move to 2-2. Resolution to approve corrective action plan in response to New York State Controller's report. I'll read it. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Newburgh and Large City School District hereby approves the corrective action plan in response to the New York State Office of the State Comptroller Financial Management Report issued February of 2026. Get a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion?
Mr. Bricarelli,
Yes.
Ms. Burks,
Yes.
Mr. Duray,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
No.
That motion passes.
Thank you, sir. Get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Burks,
Yes.
Mr. Duray,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello,
Yes.
Mr. Bricarelli.
Yes.
Thank you.